As you travel through the furthest reaches of the galaxy, you pick up a distant transmission. Signal received. Decrypting message.
Welcome to STARCHIVES, presented by Starforce Collective, a crew of spacefaring illustrators on a mission to record nerdy shit for the hope of future generations. Welcome to StarChive, Episode 3, the Batman Edition. I'm your commander, Alex Rodway. On my left is...
Hunaid Taj.
How's it going, Hunaid?
I'm doing all right.
How's it going since we last met?
Pretty well. Getting a little bit more sleep.
That's good. Good. Well, today's main topic, as I just said, will be Batman. Specifically, a video game that I finally got the chance to play now that I own a PS4 next-gen console. Arkham Knight, the 4th edition in the Arkham series. I guess it's the last game. Because Origins was a prequel. Origins was quite good. I should put it on record that Asylum, the first game that came out, is my favorite. Arkham City is pretty good. I like it a lot. It doesn't have a whole lot of replay value for me. Arkham Asylum, though, does. It feels like playing through kind of like a long movie. But today we're going to be talking about Arkham Knight. Now, I just finished the game at 100% completion for the story.
Right.
Have you played it?
No.
No.
So
Okay.
my experience with the Batman games is essentially Asylum, and then I played through the main storyline of City. And at the end of City, I just was burnt out on the series. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, for fans of the series and for fans of Batman in general, I will recommend Origins because actually the story is very tight. It's very good. It does fall in the trap of why do we have to explore the entire city? Like, why is this a thing now? Asylum was so good because you felt like you were trapped. Like, you felt that you were trapped like in this asylum. Like, you couldn't go anywhere. You were Joker's prisoner, essentially. He had all the power and you were just, trying to navigate all the traps and pitfalls as it went. Like, Arkham Asylum had it had the benefit of having a really tight story, in that as you explored the asylum, different villains would show up, and they felt really organically and it felt planned, essentially.
The story made sense.
It was
the
focused.
structure that it was presented.
It felt like a 3-act structure
Yeah.
to a story, as opposed to these later games, which feel more like a Bethesda product, where it's like you can do the main story whenever you want, and when you do the the story missions, they're great, but there's you could go off and do fuck all for however long and just fight some thugs that are around the corner, or find some Riddler trophies, which I will get into later in the podcast. Make a note of that.
Well, it gave me a lot less incentive to play the actual story of the game, because there's so many constant distractions, and there's a lot of time wasting that happens too, where you have to run from one end to the other. This is City specifically, where you have to get from one end of the city to the other end because of the way that the story is sort of laid out. And I understand that the whole point is, as you're traveling through, you're going to be doing a bunch of little things, but when those little things pull you back to the starting point where you just were, it really slows the pace down. It doesn't keep it as snappy or as doesn't keep the interest where it needs to be.
Yeah, and a major issue, and that's the dangerous precedent that Arkham City set, and you definitely see it in Origins and Knight, as I will talk about in a minute. It set the dangerous precedent of every game after Asylum has to be bigger. Like, it's got to be a sandbox, because every fucking game is a sandbox these days. I hate it.
It works for the right game. Like Grand Theft Auto, it works for.
Yeah,
it works
fine.
for games like Just Cause, but that's because That's the story you're telling.
Yeah, and it's not about the specific events that are happening. It's more of like a water cooler game where it's like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened to my character. Like, I flew a helicopter into the side of a building or something like that. That's not what Batman should be about, because there isn't that random aspect of it. All of the elements in these games are supposed to feel planned, like, you know, the animated series. It should feel like an episode or a Batman film. You just happen to be able to play as Batman. You're the one controlling him. It shouldn't feel like, you know, Batman is going around and suddenly he sees like a dog like upside down glitched out or something. Like that. It's not that kind of game where, you know, you gather around the water cooler and share experiences. With the Asylum, with the Arkham games, the experience should pretty much be the same across the board. There's not really a whole lot of variety in terms of playstyle. It's very much focused on this is what you do, and it's going to be great. That's what Asylum did, right? But, you know, Arkham City, which I still think is a decent game. Like, it's got a really good story in it. Pulls a lot from the comics, and I like it. But there's that big but where you're not really interested in exploring the city because there's so much of it, right?
And there's not a lot happen. The issue is, like, if it's going to be a city, or if it's going to be such a large world, then it has to live, and it has to have sort of this, like, it's all synthetic, but it has to feel like it's alive.
Yeah.
You know, when there's the only population in the city are people you can beat up.
Yeah.
It really detracts. Like, then there's nothing. Like, the city's not alive anymore. It's just, here's a set piece of guys. You want to beat them up. You're just gonna waste your time. You might as well just, you know, grapple hook your way to where you need to be.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Is in Asylum, there was always this great sense of accomplishment. If you saw a big group of thugs standing around, like you flip on detective mode and you see none of them are armed. And that would make sense because they're in an asylum. How would they get the guns, right? Only a few of them are going to have guns stolen from guards and whatnot. But the point is that you would see this group of thugs standing there, and you would know, it would trigger in your mind, something cool is going to happen after I beat those guys up, because they're standing in front of the next part of the game. There isn't an option for you to be like, oh, I can just bypass those and go on to the next part. No, they're standing in front of you. It's an obstacle you have to overcome. In Arkham City, Origins, and Knight, there are thugs fucking everywhere, and it doesn't matter anymore. They're just gonna get knocked unconscious. They're not gonna stay that way. If you come back to that part of the city, it doesn't matter. It takes the urgency and the
well, they're pointless. Like, the whole, they don't serve a purpose beyond just being a nuisance, right? It's not, you know, there's, in the prison complex, there are thugs around because the set piece is you need to reach this end of the area to get to this tower, and there are snipers along the way, and you need to either take them down or maneuver it with stealth. And you had limited ways of doing it. Like, you couldn't just grapple to every building and just, like, you know, coast your way through.
Yeah.
You had limited options.
Exactly.
So with City, it was just like, there's thugs down there, but there's all these buildings. I just go around. And when the game stops you from doing those things, then it's just being kind of a bit of a bitch.
Yeah, then you start to resent the game, because it's like, well, you've given me this enormous world. Why can't I do this anymore? Like, you've let me do all this stuff first, and now you're taking it away, but not in a way that serves any kind of story. It's just a case of you want it to feel like the last game that you did.
Yeah, it's just padding to extend the experience out.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a big con to these series. If you can get around that and you're just in it for the story, which for me that's the biggest part, is it well acted? Are there compelling characters? And does it still feel like a Batman game at the end of the day? And to that end, Arkham Knight, it did feel very much like a Batman game at the end of the day. It's just unfortunate that it's like having a piece of steak that's like, it's this really nice cut of meat and you want to eat it, but it's like just drowned in all of this shit that you don't want to, that you really need to wade through to get to it. Maybe a bad analogy, but you know what I mean, right? There's a pearl in, like, there's a diamond in the rough.
It's like
there.
cake, right? You want to get to the cake, but there's shitty icing all over it, and now you have to either scrape it off, or it's just going to be left behind anyway, so you're not going to eat it, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's just there to fucking add cost to the price of the game.
Exactly. There's a whole lot of window dressing on this game that you don't need. There's a lot of fat, basically, that needs. You can tell we're hungry. Talking about a lot of food. A lot of food. But that's essentially what you needed to do. Is Arkham Asylum is such a lean, tight, focused game where, there are elements where, you need to explore different areas to get all the Riddler trophies and stuff.
But that's not mandatory.
No, and to that end, that is one of my biggest complaints, is in order to get, like, the actual ending to the game, which is a cinematic.
This is Asylum, or
this is Knight.
This is Knight.
In order to get the actual ending to the game, you need to complete the entire game, which normally I would have no problem with. But in order to defeat Riddler, you have to do a bunch of cool challenges, which I liked. With Catwoman's help, they were very much story mission based, which is totally fine. That's awesome. Then it stops and it's like, okay, Batman, I'm not gonna fight you until you solve all my riddles. And I'm like, okay, well, how many are there? 243. And I'm like, fuck you. Oh my god. And it was just 243 riddles spread throughout the entire city, and locations that you explored before, like interior buildings and stuff, right? And it's just like, it became a job. I was like, I want to get the 100% ending. I'm really tempted to just look it up on YouTube, but I'm not going to do that.
Sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, right. Like, I was like, I've invested a lot of time in this game as it is, so I'll finish it. But the Riddler trophies have gotten out of hand to the point where it's not fun anymore. It was fun in Asylum because, you would see some, and some of them you could get. Some would be blocked by obstacles. You're like, oh, how do I get there? But then you would get a gadget later in the game that would be like, oh, I can go back there and do that now.
Yeah.
And that was a great way to get people to explore the asylum in this very much enclosed environment that didn't feel like a chore to get around in, right? Like that's the advantage to focusing on like a single area with like, you can put a lot of detail into it, you can put a lot of tone and atmosphere, and that's really where Asylum shines.
That was a strong suit for it.
Well, it's the best of them in terms of atmosphere. There's some great moments in Night, don't get me wrong. There's some really interesting, really fucked up stuff that happens in that game. Like, I'm gonna spoil the ending right now, so I'm gonna put a spoiler.
Now, is this the 100% true completion ending, or is this the not 100% true?
Well, this is what happens before you have to get that.
Okay,
so this is just like the last mission, right?
Right.
In the story. Essentially, over the course of the game, Batman is seeing visions of the Joker, which that's one of the best parts, is because Mark Hamill comes back. I think he comes back. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's him.
Yeah.
And basically, he's just a hallucination. That's it's a combination of the contaminated blood that Batman still has in him from Arkham City.
Right.
It's a combination of that, but the effects of that are being amplified by Scarecrow's fear toxin, which he's been constantly, basically, like, he's been battling that for years.
He's been huffing that for a long time.
He's basically an addict at this point. But it does it really well, where you'll be exploring different parts of the city and suddenly Joker's just there. Like, either he's like sitting on a rail, or you turn the camera and then suddenly he's there and he's like, oh, Bats, how's it going? And he'll take a jab at you, or he'll reveal a little bit more about the story as you go along. Those parts are amazing. That's probably the best part of the game for me.
Right.
It's just I mean, Mark Hamill, right? You can't beat him. So that leads to, you go through the game, you defeat Scarecrow and whatnot. You get to the end where Scarecrow has kidnapped Tim Drake,
Right.
Robin. You found out that the Arkham Knight is Jason Todd, which anyone who knows their Batman shit would know automatically it's him. It can't be anyone else, whatever. So essentially all that's left to do at this point is to go save Commissioner Gordon and Tim Drake. They've been kidnapped by Scarecrow. He's holding them hostage, and there's this really interesting sequence where you go to a warehouse where Scarecrow's like, get in the back of the truck, Batman, and then it'll take you to Arkham Asylum. And so you get in the back of the truck, it switches to first-person view, and you're pretty sure that there's fear toxin pumping into the room as this is happening, because the truck gets hit by something and you climb out, and suddenly you're in Crime Alley, and Bruce's parents are dead on the ground.
Right.
Which is, I know they do it in every single game, but it's still... They
do revisit that plot point in almost
everything.
Every Batman-related franchise. It doesn't matter, it's just like, this is the most important thing. We're never going to let you forget it.
But you know what? It's a good image, and it worked for that game because...
But who doesn't know that storyline anymore? Like, the point is, like, at this point, it just seems like this weird masturbatory thing where it's like, his parents died, he was an orphan, and it happened in this alley, and you guys forgot, right? This is how it happened.
In this specific case, it worked thematically for the game. I didn't have a problem with it, and it worked especially because it leads into Batman, you press X to pay respects, whatever. And then Joker shows up and, says his thing. And then you basically start to fight him.
Okay.
Like a regular enemy. And then suddenly dozens of Jokers are hopping over the fence to fight you. And as you're fighting them, just more and more come in until eventually you put one into a headlock and you have to tap the strike button basically to kill him, like to snap his neck.
Right.
Now I experimented with this. I was like, okay, what's gonna happen if I just don't? And he goes on for a couple minutes where he's like, come on, do it, kill me. Says gradually more more crazy things until he stops saying stuff, and I'm like, all right, I do have to do it. So you snap the Joker's neck, and then it the vision fades and goes to a different thing where he's like, I knew you had the heart of a killer. And then it goes to a really cool sequence where you're from the Joker's perspective.
Okay.
Where Batman gets injected with the fear toxin basically straight into his neck. And it's this really cool vision of the Joker looking at Gotham City, and the whole city's just on fire. And he's like, this is my best work yet. And you go around as the Joker, basically killing all the other supervillains like a first-person shooter.
Right.
You can decide not to shoot some of them. I think Penguin shows up and he's like, I let him go, and I tried to kneecap people if it was possible because I didn't want to kill anybody just in case it was in the real world someone I cared about. But then this really interesting last part. It's first person view. You have a shotgun in your hands and you're playing as the Joker, and you're going through this underground mausoleum, and you're constantly getting cut off. The rooms keep shifting as you change your view.
Right.
Until eventually you end up in this courtyard that looks very Arkham-esque. And there's a Batman statue standing in the middle, and there's nowhere else to go. So you shoot the Batman statue and it crumbles. And then, you're looking around and suddenly there's two of them, and you shoot both of them. Then you look around, there's three. And then suddenly the Batman statues are everywhere until one of them breaks and Batman grabs you by the neck. And then the positions switch.
Right.
and it goes to a different part where you're in this long kind of Star Wars-esque corridor, like kind of like a bridge, right? And actually, you're still from the Joker's perspective at this point, and Batman is just like, he's just walking towards you slowly, and you're shooting him, and it's just not working. Like he'll disappear into a puff of smoke and then instantly reappear a little bit closer,
Right.
until he shows up right at Joker's face, and then you switch it up, and then basically you just beat Joker into a cell, lock him away, and then like push it away. He says like, no, you're done, Joker. No one's going to remember you. Like, that's Joker's one fear, is that no one will remember him.
Right.
That's the whole idea of the game, is Scarecrow wants to find out what Batman's afraid of. And ultimately, it's losing more people because of what he's done, and people finding out who he is so that people can target, the ones that he cares about.
Right.
The game ends on a really ballsy note where Commissioner Gordon is forced to unmask Batman, and it shows it on like live television that Scarecrow is broadcasting to the entire city.
Right.
And now everyone knows Batman is Bruce Wayne. But it's great because after you defeat the Joker, this is basically Batman's willpower in his mind fighting off the Joker influence. Like, it shows his eyes are green and then they turn back to the normal color. He's like, I'm not scared of Ukraine. And he's like, what? That's impossible. And then it's great because Batman gets loose and like he grabs the syringe gauntlet that Scarecrow has and just forces these syringes into Scarecrow's neck, and he's like, taste of your medicine, doctor. That's a Batman Begins line, but in any case, it reduces him to like a gibbering idiot, which is great. So that part of the game was so Arkham, and it felt so nice to play it. It was so satisfying. There's just so much shit that you have to do around the city that just feels not very Batman at all, that I wish you didn't have to do.
Right.
I mean, technically, I guess you don't, but I don't know. It just didn't feel nice that it felt like they were forcing you to do the side quest to get the true ending, which they were, essentially.
There are games that sort of have like in RPGs, they'll have like level limits, right? You can't really pursue a certain part of the story until you sort of level up. And some games will block you by not letting you proceed until you grind a little bit and
Sure.
get the experience that you need before you go ahead and progress. But when you're open worlding it, it makes it very difficult to put those limits down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've played Grand Theft Auto 5.
Not a lot. I played a little bit.
Okay. Like, it's the same. The idea is like the city is available to you. You can travel and to any part of it right from the beginning.
Okay.
And once again, there are these like additional things you can do, but the story was tight.
Yeah. Well, it's like Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Well, there was a lot of like weird things in Red Dead where it's like you have to do these like weird little side missions before the next plot point becomes available. It was like helping this dude with his like flying machine, or like harvesting flowers for some crazy guy. Like they ended up being things that you have to do them, otherwise you can't really progress through the story.
Although in that game's defense, just to get off topic for a quick second, in that game's defense, it felt very much like a Western, because Westerns do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, they're very rarely just completely focused on one tight goal, unless it's like, True Grit by the Coen brothers. It's very, very much like, we have to get there.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost always wacky side characters that show up and have absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the story.
Right.
In Western films, so I felt that was kind of
okay. So it played thematically to what it was represented.
Yeah.
But City, it just didn't feel that way. Like, a lot of the time, it's like, oh, there's like the phone call things, like the phone booth.
Oh, with Zaz, Victor Zaz.
Right, and I was like, this feels really out of place, and it's just like, what happens if I don't do them? And turns out nothing. Like, it's not like So one of the worst games that came out in the DC universe in a long time was the Superman Returns game. This is like years ago.
Oh, geez. Movie tie-in game.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But one of the cool things that they did with that movie was that because Superman is invincible, essentially. Right?
Yeah.
The city has a health bar.
Oh.
So if you don't react to a
That's
crisis,
interesting.
the city's health depletes.
Okay.
Right. So there's always a consequence of not, stopping a meteor from crashing into the earth, or not stopping Lex Luthor's robots from attacking the city.
With that game, because I haven't played it, was there an option to be able to do everything, or did you have to make a conscious choice of, I have to do this, like I have to save the meteor, but that means I won't have time to save this lady who's getting mugged? Like, was there a consequence to that?
Well, the game would end. Like, the city, essentially the health bar would deplete, and then the game, like, you go into game over state, right?
I see.
So, and then there were story missions where it's like there are 3 events happening. You need to figure out the best way of handling all of them, and they're constantly health bars dropping.
Right.
As if you're taking too long and doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But there, like even the stupid side missions. Now there was, it became a chore. I'm not saying that it wasn't obnoxious.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to game over state or game failure state just because you don't want to fight the crummy 10 robots which are throwing a car at people.
Mm-hmm.
But with having like this phone call, it's like, I'll kill somebody if you don't answer the phone call. Like,
who cares?
yeah, like it was like I know if you're hardcore role playing Batman in the games, you'd take every single phone call and you would punch every single thug along the way. But because the game didn't feel as tight, I was just like I wasn't invested in that sort of side story. And same thing with like the weird Bane missions where you do a bunch of stuff and then Bane just shows up and he's like, "Help me, Batman, because reasons."
Help me get this Titan back.
Yeah, the Titan formula.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And then it just turns out at the end he was like, I was screwing you the whole time.
Right? And it's like, that's a very Batman thing that would happen, but...
Yeah, of course. But it's like, it's completely separate.
Yeah, it's not the
from
story. It doesn't progress. It's not like the actions there change the end results,
Like, let's look at Asylum for a sec, because there are
nothing happens for no reason.
Exactly.
Nothing happens without a reason.
Bane shows up because Joker kidnapped him and because he needed his blood, or he needed the venom to create Titan.
Yeah.
Like, that's why Bane was there. You fight Bane because he gets roided up, and then Bane doesn't come back after the Batmobile takes him out. Like, he doesn't show up again.
Yeah.
And that's fine because he was in the story for the amount of time he was supposed to be. And then after that, you get your Scarecrow moments where Scarecrow's a recurring character because every time you hear the hiss, you're like, oh,
Fear toxin.
Fear toxin. And that, it made it feel special, right? Specifically with Victor Zsasz, especially, two instances he shows up in Asylum. Once at the very beginning of the game where they're teaching you how to do the Predator stuff. And, he's got a cop hostage. And you're like, cool, this is happening right now. I can see I can see the stakes. And they tell you, if he sees you, that cop is going to die.
Yeah, and it's a game failure state.
Yeah,
like basically, try again.
If you fail it, if you fail the mission in Arkham City, no one gives a shit.
Yeah, because
it doesn't matter. You just choose something else to do, and you could go the entire game without doing it.
And I'm sure there are characters that made an appearance, and I was like, I don't care. Like, I think it was Archangel not Archangel.
You're thinking of Azrael.
Azrael shows up, and I'm just like, I really don't care. Like,
and that's the thing too. He has a great little story in Arkham Knight that would have completely served the plot if they had integrated it into the main storyline. It's really interesting because he shows up 5 times where he's like, hello, Batman. When you're done, you're going to need someone to take up the mantle. How about me? And it's really cool because he's like, okay, Azrael, I'm going to test you. And then you switch control over to Azrael and you do a couple challenges, do a couple fights. It resolves with you do a cool detective mode thing where you're actually going through Azrael's implanted memories, which is kind of goofy, but whatever, it's Batman.
Right.
And you're like cycling through the video feed looking for hidden symbols to decipher a hidden message. And it's like, Azrael, you have to kill the Batman when you gain his trust. And it's like subliminal, right?
Right.
And it's kind of neat because you're doing this in Oracle's clock tower on the Bat computer there. Azrael shows up and he's like, I have to kill you, Batman, and replace you. You're too soft on these criminals. The only way to deliver justice is through swift vengeance. He's like, like you have to make a choice, Azrael. I'm not going to stop you either way. So you have the option. I don't know what happens if you decide to kill Batman. I'm pretty sure he just blocks it and then punches you in the face. But I said, no. He's not going to kill Batman. He's going to go against his programming. He snaps his own sword like he does the blade shatter with the wrist gauntlets.
Right.
And he's like, I make my own path. And then Azrael goes off and does his own thing. That would have been perfect if it was integrated into the story in any way. But it's not. It's just something that happens on the side. It's
stuff that you can do.
It's just a plate of onion rings.
Yeah.
That like they taste great, but that's all there is. Like we're talking about food again. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop. But with the Victor Zsasz thing, the second time he shows up is when you're looking for Dr. Young, and Dr. Young is a key character who you've already met, you've got an invested interest in, and you need her to tell you about the Titan formula, which is integral to the plot of the game. It's important for you to find her, and you do because and Victor Zsasz takes her captive. So he's there to service the plot. And then when you defeat him for a second time, it makes sense because again, it's there to service the plot. It's not that he kidnaps some nobody that we've never met before. And it's not
a choice that's given to you whether you can do this or not.
You have to do it.
You have to do it because this is the tight story that we're telling you about this one event that happened.
Yeah. Because
Arkham was taken over by the different factions, which are also competing amongst themselves. It's not just that, it's not like Joker's pulling all the strings. The other guys are there.
Scarecrow's in there. Killer Croc's down doing his thing.
Yeah.
Who else is in it? Well, Harley's in it, but she's doing her own thing too for Joker. But yeah, there's a variety of villains there, and then you have a nice little to touch on the Riddler stuff. With Riddler, he's incorporated pretty well into the story because you never actually see him. No. You only hear him in your cowl, and when you do all the Riddler challenges, which is fun to do because you get to explore you explore the island. When you eventually get 100%, you hear him getting arrested, and it's hilarious and it's great. And he's like, "What, Batman? You looked on the internet, you dick."
But he calls there's a funny thing too, right? Like obviously not everybody's
you must be cheating.
Yeah,
you're looking these up on the internet.
Some people probably did.
I had to for Arkham Knight. All right, I don't give a shit. I had to look them up on the internet because you know what?
It's an effective time thing too, right? Like if you're spending all your time just looking for, and they're not obvious either. Like some of them are just really. It's like that weird like 80s and 90s like game puzzle thing where it's like tickle the cat with the key and it'll throw up the boot that you need.
Oh
cat, right? Like it was just like weird. Like
it's
there's
like
a key to a door.
There's no way to do it the first time. You have to do it trial and error.
Yeah,
and that's stupid.
But it's not logical in the way that things sort of
there's no
work
logic
together, right? It's just like weird, random things. They're just like, well, let's pick a bunch of things out of a hat and see if it works.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too with the actual riddles. They worked really well in Arkham's Asylum because all the characters that they felt they couldn't fit into the story got little nods through those riddles. Like you get to see Catwoman's whip and her goggles. You get to see Penguin's umbrella in a display case there. They reference Black Mask and what's his name? Like the Great White Shark.
Right, yeah.
Like there's just a jar of teeth in the morgue. That's great. It's part of the environment, but it stands out. Like you know that there's something there, and it's obvious enough that you can find it, but it's also very organic in the background. And that's something that I felt they kind of made a misstep in with going forward into the next console, PS4, Xbox One, is that the graphics are amazing in Arkham Knight. Like it looks so good. No complaints about how the game looks, aesthetic, like
the presentation is very good.
Yeah, in terms of technical aspects, it's so good. It's nice. Like it's lovely. But there's so much detail put into it, you can't discern what's a riddle and what's not. And maybe some people would think like, oh, that just makes it more of a challenge. It's like, no, it just kind of makes it arbitrary as to what you're supposed to scan.
Look for this thing that builds a house. Okay.
Thanks.
So do you want bricks? Do you want beams? Do you want mortar? Is it a door? Is it a window? And just stand outside. It's like, oh, it's this very specific building in a very specific location. You know?
And there's this one specific riddle that has to do with Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy dies in this game. And it's kind of heartbreaking actually, because she becomes kind of a hero where you apprehend her at the very beginning of the game. Take her to GCPD and put her in jail. But after a while, basically Scarecrow is going to release his toxin all over the city. It's very much the plot from Batman Begins. It's exactly the plot from Batman Begins. And the only way to combat the toxin is for Ivy to get a hold of these giant plants to release spores that will counteract the toxin. I'm like, okay, fine. That's fine. Her power is to molecularly change plants at like a molecular level. That's cool. Batman game. Don't care.
Just don't think about it too much. Yeah.
Do that. So you take her to one of these plants. You know, she goes inside it, and then you have to find a couple others with the Batmobile sonar, which is fine. Whatever. And then Crane releases the toxin. I didn't think it was going to happen, but he does. And when he does, it looks really cool. Like when you're above, like it's covering maybe 3 stories tall worth of the city. So you're up above it in the like on tops of towers and stuff. But it's like a roiling mass. Like it looks like a storm, like a bunch of thunderheads with like crackling effects and stuff. And that's where the graphics really shine. Is that part looked really cool. You know, Poison Ivy at this point, she's giving all of her life force essentially to convert the toxin, but she can't do it with just one plant. I guess you gotta find 2 more. And essentially, in order to completely reverse the effects of the toxin, she basically dissolves into dandelion fluff.
Okay.
Like Batman's holding her in his arms, and he's like, Ivy, you're going to die. And she's like, I know. It's the last thing I would ever do. And something like that, right? And then she passes on, and I'm like,
a lot of the heroes and villains in Batman sort of don't take up. They're in this weird gray area because Pamela Isley is supposed to be like an environmental activist who's trying to save the world from itself, right?
Well, it's like Mr. Freeze in Arkham City was one of the best villains because eventually you kind of do come to an understanding with him, and he actually helps you out. Because he's like, I'm only trying to save Nora, Batman.
Doesn't he betray you at one point though? I think it's like after you get him his suit and he's just like, well then.
Yeah, okay, that happens at first. That's when you get him his suit, he tries to kill you.
Right.
But then you beat him up. and it turns out like Harley Quinn and Joker stole the thing he was looking for anyway.
Right.
And then you do a side quest for him where I think it's Harley Quinn has stolen Nora. Like they took the tank that she's in and hidden her. I forget who it was that did it. But basically, if you do that side quest, Mr. Freeze gives you like the cryogenic grenade thing.
Oh, okay, and that's the story. That's the thing that you need to do.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so.
Because you need it for Clayface to beat him.
Yes, yeah. So maybe it's not a side quest, maybe it's main quest. But yeah, you help him out, and I mean, a lot of Batman villains are just, they were decent people, which had and they had horrible things happen to them, and that's why they're so bad. Like even a character as kind of silly as Firefly, the dude with the jetpack.
Yeah.
It's covered in burns from head to toe because of an accident that happened when he was doing special effects, like he was a pyrotechnician. There's a pretty great interview tape that you can get in Arkham Knight, where interview tapes are awesome.
Those are one of the best parts about Asylum.
Yeah, and you do get a few, and they're all really great. But you find out that before he became Firefly, he was trying to do practical effects in movies. And he got fired because people didn't want to see that anymore. One of the biggest movies he worked on, where it was really expensive and got huge critical acclaim, was a box office bomb. And he gets fired for it.
Right.
But when he gets fired, he like the guy who's firing him, he's got like a lit cigar. He's like, you're gonna get fired now, you fucking dick. And then Firefly's like, okay. Like he just nods, and then he spits nitroglycerin in the guy's face and like lights his face on fire. Oh man. Just stuff like that, right? Like, okay. It definitely informs Batman's character, where he's this is why it works, like why the villains are so good, is that Batman is the guy who had the horrible thing happen to him, and he used it as a reason to do good things. All of these other guys had similar things happen to them, and it let them corrupt their their humanity or their morality.
There's a lot to be said about this weird
dichotomy,
right-wing-esque nature of Batman too, because if you take a look at,
it's very fascist.
In an essence, and he's not effective in the way that he doles out his justice, right?
And they make a point of that too in I think it's Jason Todd who says it towards the end of the game.
Well, he's very much he's Batman. He's like in Mask of the Red Hood, where he's probably just as good as Batman is in terms of his effectiveness as a combatant. Yeah. Right. But he's willing to pull the trigger, whereas Batman's like, I can't do it, or I won't do it, or you shouldn't do this. Like there's all these sort of moral lines of thought that he always throws. Is very much philosophical in his nature about fighting crime. But it ends up being that innocent people are the ones that suffer, not him. He's at the top of the social structure in Gotham. He's one of the richest people. Yep. The general public might not know it, but Bruce Wayne lives a life of luxury outside of his Batmaning career.
It's true, and I mean, one can argue that, like, if he chose to not be Batman anymore, like, other than maybe like he might feel like an asshole for a little while, there's really no consequence to him not being Batman anymore, to him personally, because no one knows who he is until the end of the game, right? Which I think does inform that quite a bit. But I mean, it's ultimately pretty selfish of him.
Yeah, and it's more of like his own personal vendettas that he's acting in, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's the line, "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman." Yeah. And I mean, they tried to get around that in the Nolan movies, where it's like, no, he's not vengeance, he is justice. And at least in those movies, like, say what you want about Dark Knight Rises, I liked that they took away all his money in Dark Knight Rises, where basically he gave everything to Gotham. He basically gave up his life at the end. I think they should have killed him, to be honest. I don't think they should have shown Christian Bale at the very end of that movie. Would have been perfect if he had blown up. And, he gave everything to the city. Like, he gave all of his money, he gave his entire life to it. Just all of the energy that he had went into protecting Gotham. Not so much in the Arkham games.
But that's a franchise which is sort of established on on what feels like off of the animated series.
Yes, well, very much so.
Yeah.
Because of the voice cast and the look of and feel of at least the first one.
Well, let's talk about the look of
The atmosphere.
And the atmosphere and like the aesthetic choices that are made with the subsequent games after Asylum. Like Asylum was very much like the animated series turned into, a game where the aesthetics were brought over, they were sort of updated for the current generation.
Yep.
But, like the traits and even like the voice actors they pulled, like it was like, this is the Batman you grew up with a kid. It's a little bit darker, a little bit edgier.
It's also the game I didn't know I wanted. And then when I got it, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Like I was blown away when I got it. I remember I rented it from Blockbuster. And I called them because I was like, reserve a copy for me. I really want to play this game. And I reserved a copy to rent, right? Like I didn't even buy it. I ended up getting the collector's edition for Christmas.
Yeah, I bought the collector's edition when it launched.
And that's one collector's edition I don't regret getting because you get a cool little notebook, you get a battery.
I do. Yeah. I regret the investment I made just because like it's one of those marketing garbage things too, right? Where it's like, oh, you got a batarang, and I'm like,
Arkham City
open
had
the box.
Arkham City had a better collector's edition.
The noir statuette. Yeah. But it's like you open up the box and there's a batarang in there, but it's not a batarang. No, it's a piece of plastic which looks like absolute shit.
Yeah.
Like it, you might be all right. This is worthwhile, but I was like, why did I do this? The journal was cool.
I might have been. It might have been just that I was that I got it for Christmas, so I didn't care.
I paid for a retail price, right?
Yeah.
So I was like,
drop $110.
Yeah. Why did I do this?
Whoa.
But since I think since that point, the only other collector's edition that I bought was Skyrim, and Skyrim's was okay. That's not true. I bought the Diablo 3 collector's edition as well. Right? So it was a very formative game in my teenage years. Like it really led to like the whole dark fantasy sort of thing that I've been.
That's fair. And to be fair, there's so many editions of different games now. Anyway, it's like
it's like they have like
the edition.
Yeah, they have like the day one edition, then they've got like the premium, and they've got like the deluxe collector's edition, and then they've got just your base.
Fucking seasons pass.
Just so much crud that comes with it. It's just like now you have like a billion things. Like if you buy every collector's edition, your spaces are gonna be filled with garbage.
Yeah.
Right.
And remember the days when if you wanted to unlock a character, you had to do something in the game to get it.
Now it's just DLC.
And Mortal Kombat 10, the character is on the disc, but you have to pay to unlock the content that's already on the disc you paid for.
It's the microtransactions thing which they're pushing towards. Like I've been playing Destiny for a while.
Okay.
And for a long time it didn't have like any sort of microtransaction stuff, but recently they folded into it, and it's for like vanity things mostly. Like so far it's just like buy a new dance for your character, or like you can buy like this custom color thing which you can't buy in the stores, and you can't find it. Like it won't be given to you, or you have a chance of finding it, but it's very small.
Yeah. Right.
You can spend real money to buy these things.
Actually, kind of speaking of DLC, there's some pretty good DLC in the Arkhamverse. Not so much with Asylum. There's not a whole lot there. Basically, they're just extra challenge maps, which whatever, fine.
They brought us some skins for your character too, right?
Not in Asylum. That was City. Asylum, all that you get after you beat the game, other than an immense, satisfied sense of accomplishment, is you unlock Armored Batman that you can use in the challenges. Whatever, fine. That game doesn't need any of that shit.
The challenges are really super, like they don't. Do they do anything? Like, do they unlock anything? No, it's just like the game's over, and I just want to beat up some guys and see how long of a combo chain I can pull.
Exactly, and I mean, for me, I unlocked every achievement for Arkham Asylum. Mm-hmm. One of two games that I've done, and we've talked about Mass Effect 2. That's the only other one I've ever done 100%. With Arkham Asylum, it was just because it's a single player game that I don't have to worry about multiplayer achievements. Yeah. So already I was like, cool. But all of the achievements were fun to get. Like I had a lot of fun trying to do all of the challenges, because they would ramp them up in such a way that the difficulty felt nice. And you know, you had your normal challenges where it's like, all right, do a silent takedown, do a glide kick takedown, and then do like hit a guy with a batarang, then knock him out. And then they would have the extreme version of that challenge where you'd have to do like some increasingly more elaborate gadget work.
Yeah.
And that felt cool
Or
because
like the gargoyles have bombs on them, so you can only use it once before you.
well, yeah, exactly. Or you couldn't use them at all, otherwise you would alert people that you were around. But anyway, getting back to the DLC, with Arkham Knight, I've downloaded a bunch of stuff for it, but there's a bunch of like it's all free.
Right.
Like there's a lot of nice little stuff, little free things. Because I don't like the look of Robin that they gave him. I don't like the shaved head. I think it looks dumb. He looks like a UFC fighter. But you get a new 52 skin for him.
Right.
And there's this great section of the game where you go through a movie studio, like a classic 50s movie studio, where there's a bunch of B-movie sets.
Right.
And each set has a different boss. It's so good because there's a fight, but like a combat boss, a predator boss, and this really weird but really interesting boss where it's it's a character singing to Batman,
Right.
and Batman is just paying attention to him, and they're revolving on like this little stage, and in the background you're controlling Robin disarming bombs and stuff. Is really clever, really cool.
So it's like over the shoulder of Batman, but now you're like someone in the far distance.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that to me was probably my favorite part of the game, was because they incorporated Batman and Robin working together, and like in the Predator challenge, it was really cool because you know you're just playing the game as normal. You're playing Batman, and then suddenly you're looking at an enemy and you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get that guy." But now there's a new prompt, like a button prompt, and it says "Call in Robin," and you're like, "What does that mean?" So you press it and like Robin now, and then you see Robin swoop down, take out the guy, and now suddenly you're playing as Robin.
Right.
And then you're like, "Okay, I gotta get out of sight so Batman can get the next one." You're like, "This is fucking amazing! Why isn't this the whole game? Why didn't they make the entire game this?"
Right.
It was so much fun.
Well, is there any co-op opportunities in that game at all? Like, you can play with a friend and you're playing, Batman and Robin. I don't think so.
Don't think so. It's just a case of there are certain missions where you can swap between two characters during either a fight or like a Predator challenge. Like there's a side mission where you're taking out weapon shipments that Penguin's bringing in from Bloodhaven. And that means, like, Bloodhaven is where Nightwing is.
Mm-hmm.
Nightwing's like, well, that's not gonna fucking fly. So he comes in and he's like, "Bruce, I need your help." And he's like, "All right, what do you want to do?" And you track the shipments to a warehouse. And then you say, "Nightwing, I'm in position." And then Nightwing will show up as you fight the guys. And the very last mission is cool because Penguin catches on to what you're doing, takes Nightwing captive. So you go rescue him. Nightwing's getting he's tied to a chair and throwing out smart quips like, "Oh, you call that a punch?
Right.
My mom could hit harder than you." And they go wham, and he's like, "Ah, you didn't even mess up my hair." And you sneak up behind where Nightwing is tied up. And then you hit the button that says "Rescue Nightwing." It's really cool. You burst through the wooden paneling, snap the handcuffs or ropes or whatever. Nightwing breaks free, pulls out his Eskrima sticks and starts beating people with them.
Right.
It's so good. It's so cinematic, and it feels like the animated series again. And then you get Bat Tank.
Yeah, so even though I haven't played the game, I try to keep my finger on the pulse when it comes to sort of these big blockbusters, and a lot of people said that though there are cool elements with the tank or the Batmobile. Is it the Batmobile or is it legitimately the Bat Tank? What do they call it?
Well, it's the Batmobile, but it converts into a tank.
Okay, so that's a tank mode.
Yes, you hold a button and suddenly it'll basically move in 360 degrees. You can just move it around instead of holding down a trigger to accelerate.
Okay.
You're just moving it around and it's kind of slow. I just wish they hadn't put that in at all.
I don't think they really even needed the whole Batmobile mechanic at all. Like, if you're gonna say that you're in the city and you're Batman, and the whole point is that you get around, your shadow and your stealth, having a car just like blazing down the
zooming around is not exactly the picture of stealth.
Yeah.
And especially when they've already devoted so much time to the grappling system, which works pretty well, and it's really cool to fly around Gotham City. That being said, once you get a hang of the Batmobile's controls, it does feel really cool to drive around in it. Like it feels, again, it feels like the animated series.
Now, are the cities like this? Do they feel the same? Are they living, or are they just full of thugs?
It's full of thugs.
Okay.
They, right off the bat, in the opening cinematic, it's like Gotham gets struck by the Scarecrow, mass evacuation, 6 million people no longer in the city. So it's like, now the only people left are thugs that I can punch in the face. And there's this other thing where when you're driving around, you straight up hit people with the Batmobile. But in order to get around it so that Batman doesn't kill people, it just shows like electric shocks around them as they get thrown away. And it's like, okay, so he like tased them out of the way, I guess. It's like, that's so dumb. Those people are dead.
Yeah.
Those people are straight up dead.
Doesn't it have like a cannon as well? Doesn't it have
okay. Here's the other thing. Oh my god. This is probably the dumbest part of the game is you have to do tank battles with drones that get sent after you. Like they're basically unmanned armored tanks that go after you.
Because you can't kill people.
Alfred references twice in like the first 10 minutes of you finding these tanks that, yes, sure, they are unmanned. You can destroy them with aplomb. And you blow up all these tanks and you're like, okay. The Arkham Knight is losing a lot of tanks. What if he put people in them? Then Batman can't do anything. Like, he can't shoot the tanks now because there's a person inside. This is Jason Todd fighting Batman. He knows that, he can't kill. Just throw a guy in one of the tanks. And it's like, Alfred, I can't take out this tank. There's a guy inside. I don't know what you're going to do now, Master Brain. Sounds like you're straight fucked. So, that's a big plot hole to have.
Yeah.
For a part of the game that was A, unnecessary, and B, not that fun. And C, just
once again, a thing to do to pad the game.
Yeah. And to be honest, the story did not need padding. Like, the story is very thick and like meaty, and referencing food again. But there's a lot to sink your teeth into with this story. Like, it would have been fine if they had just had it like, when you go to a different location, there's a cinematic of Batman riding in the Batmobile. That would have been fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to do an open world. You don't have to.
You don't even and you only need to do that like once or twice. Like, it gets really obnoxious when that is like if that's a loading screen, like if you're going from one area to another and the loading screen is him just zipping down. Like
in Mass Effect with the Normandy flying.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great way to do it because it feels like, okay, we're flying to this place now.
Like, you're going to have to load anyways.
Yeah.
So this is how he gets around, It's like...
So sure, have the Batmobile driving. It's like...
Yeah. If you want to throw him like tasing people out of the way, just put it in the cinematic. Don't...
Or people jumping out of the way.
Yeah, like... Whatever that mechanic is, but it doesn't, once you get where you need to be, you don't need the car. Like, that was the best part of Asylum is you drive in with the Joker, and the only other time you see the Batmobile is when you needed to take down Bane, and that's it.
And you don't even have to do that part. It's, you've defeated Bane, now here's a cool cinematic as a reward. And it's like, no, Bane, today I break you. And then you go like, beep, and there's like, woo, and it hits him in the chest, puts him in the river. You're like, listen.
That's it. That's all you need.
That's all you need. It's perfect cinematic directing. Another thing with the Bat Tank that is, it's like you can't have this in a Batman game. Like it's. I don't even know the word to describe it's unconscionable. You can't have it. No. I'm getting so worked up. Okay, there's missions in the game where it's required to use the bat tank, and it's required to use the Batmobile as well. Like there's a part where the dispersal machine that's putting all the scarecrow gas into the air, it's a big tank,
Right.
and it's the Arkham Knight driving it. Fine. But it's this really stupid part where you have to fire a missile at it. That you have to wait a couple seconds for it to lock on to like one part of it, right?
Right.
You have to hit like all four sides of this tank before it blows up. And after you do one, you have to run away because its gun is really big and Batmobile can't take it. So you've got to run away. You got to drive away real fast. And and so you do that. Thing explodes. Arkham Knight gets out of the tank and he's like, fuck you, Batman. And then you punch him a couple times and then suddenly he's gone. And you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. There's never a point where you actually have a fight with him. Like there's a Predator challenge where after you find out he's Jason Todd, he sends a bunch of goons at you, and he's like on a grappling, like he's on a gargoyle with a sniper rifle, kind of looking around.
Right.
I'm like, how cool would this have been if it had been an Arkham Origins boss fight, where you actually get to have a fist fight with Jason Todd, not unlike Under the Red Hood the movie.
Yeah.
Where they have this amazing fight in a bathroom in an apartment building. It just didn't make any sense to me why they would do that. This leads into my next complaint, where after you defeat Jason Todd, which is kind of a big moment, he just kind of fucks off and he's like, I'm sad, Bruce. And I'm like, okay.
You never loved me.
He's like, you didn't even look for me. It's like, I thought you were dead. It doesn't matter. But after,
and that's another mess in the whole mythos with Jason Todd and like how that works. So
well, to be fair, it works a lot better in this story. They don't do any Lazarus Pit nonsense.
right.
It's actually kind of fucked up. You find out that the Joker, when, like in the comics and the movies and stuff, when Jason Todd goes after the Joker gets the better of him, like cracks him in the head with a crowbar. There's nothing really he can do.
Yeah.
He gets incapacitated pretty quick. The Joker kidnaps him and takes him to Arkham and keeps him there for a fucking year. Doesn't kill him, but he sends him a video where it looks like he sends Batman a video where it looks like he shoots Jason in the head.
So this is an alternate.
This is an alternate reality for Jason Todd. It's not that he died in an explosion, that Batman just wasn't in time to save him.
Right.
And then there's none of the him holding the corpse. There's none of that. That doesn't happen. So they change it a little bit, but I think for the better.
Yeah, it works better in this sense because it's like that whole thing led to like part of the. I think it was like 52, or it was like the 52, or the whole Blackest Day, Darkest Night sort of thing, and I was like, so he literally dies, he's dead, and he comes back to life. Like he crawls out of his grave, he's not dead, and that's why he's back, and that's.
And I mean, that's what they did in Under the Red Hood was, Ra's al Ghul felt bad, so he put him in the Lazarus Pit, and then it didn't take very well.
Yeah.
And then Jason was like, fuck you. It was a little dumb.
And that explains his insanity.
Yeah. But he's not really, well, he's insane in Arkham Knight because he's broken. Like, he was tortured for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets branded with a J on his cheek, which is like, it's actually kind of fucked up. Like, he takes off the mask and he's got the scar there. And you're like, okay. And at this point, like, we're getting exposed to the Joker quite a bit in this game because he's there as Batman's hallucination. But as far as Jason Todd knows, Joker's dead. Like, he ain't coming back.
Yeah.
So the only person he has to take this out on is Batman, which makes sense for a lot of the rage that he has. So that part I liked. Jason, I just wish Jason Todd was around more, because for all of the for all of the fucking voiceover that you get from the Arkham Knight, where he's like, "Take him out, get him, you can do it." It's like, "But you come fight me yourself. Like, what are you waiting for?" It didn't make any sense to me that they would do that. But sorry, I got off track there. When Jason Todd kind of leaves after he takes his mask off and stuff, there's no one controlling the militia anymore.
Right.
But Scarecrow had a backup plan. He says, "Don't worry, Batman. I have a second in command that will take over the militia hunting for you." And it's Deathstroke.
Right.
Which I'm like, awesome. Deathstroke is great. It makes sense. It makes sense in the story. I'm like, okay, cool. We get to see Deathstroke again. You know how we get to fight him? Another tank battle. And I'm like, this is no, you don't do that to Deathstroke.
It was Origins where it was like the 10 people hunting for.
Yeah.
That was okay.
It was basically like, it was kind of a reverse Kill Bill, where it was Kill Batman, and it was like 12 assassins gonna go after Batman. And that was the best boss fight by far in any Arkham game, was when you get to fight Slade in that game, because it combines the already good combat of the Arkham games, like where you just go punch, 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 counter, punch, punch, gadget, counter, all that. And then it combined them with interactive cinematics, where he would jump and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna punch you, Batman," but it shows the counter, like
the little reticle thing that pops up.
Spider sense, essentially. And you would press the counter button during the cutscene, and that would influence how the cutscene went. If you didn't press it, you get punched in the face, and you'd have to fight him more, right?
Right.
Like that fight was excellent. It was really good, and I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to doing another one. No, you finish the missions. You fight Slade in a tank, and when you defeat his tank, Slade gets out. You sucker punch him in a non-interactive cutscene. You take him back to GCPD, and then there's nothing left. That's just it. And I'm like, no. First of all, Deathstroke is technically better than Batman at everything because he's got like a super soldier thing in him.
He was experimented on.
Yeah, so like kind of Weapon X super soldier bullshit.
Deadpoolish? Deadpool's based.
Wade Wilson, Slade Wilson. Yeah, there's that. Deathstroke, the fucking Terminator, is what he used to be called. But they completely screwed him up. Like, I know it was just a case of we need somebody to take over after we exit Jason Todd. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, we're at the end of the game. We're not going to have a fight with Deathstroke. It's just going to be another tank battle because we're running out of time. I'm like, well, just don't do it then. Just don't. Because the worst part is that you can't do all these missions and not even have Deathstroke show up in the game. These side missions become unavailable after you get to a certain point, and then like there's just like a the red like no sign.
Right.
It's just over that on the mission select screen. Like you just can't select it until after you defeat Jason Todd.
Okay, so there's a period of time where it locks any additional, but it's not like it's like, okay, well, this mission, and some games I've noticed will do this where it's like, are you sure you want to continue, because after this point the game will end.
There's nothing in the game to do that,
to tell you that otherwise.
No, well, because you can't finish the game without doing everything. Like, the only way you finish the game with the true ending is if you get 100% in every single Most Wanted challenge.
Right.
Which I guess I'll speak about now, because it's fine. It just didn't make sense that I had to get all those stupid Riddler trophies for it to happen. Essentially, Batman, after he gets revealed to be Bruce Wayne, he goes back to GCPD, and he brings up Alfred on his risk communicator, and he's like, "Alfred, prepare the Nightfall protocol." Nightfall? Bane finds out who he is. But wait, that already happened in Origins.
Right.
What does this mean? So all it is that it's basically a post-plot device where it's like it gets you to finish everything else. It gives you goal to work towards.
So this conceals his identity again? Or no?
Not at all. Everyone knows he's Bruce Wayne at the end, which is, I think it's a good decision. It makes sense for the end of the game. But once you get 100% on everything, you activate the Nightfall protocol. It goes to a cutscene. Vicky Vale and the rest of the press are outside Wayne Manor, obviously. The Batwing shows up, drops Bruce off. He goes through the main entrance with Alfred, and then Wayne Manor explodes and like just burns to the ground. Everyone thinks he's dead.
Right.
And it goes to a voiceover from Jim Gordon, where it shows him in a car on his way to Barbara Gordon and Tim Drake's wedding. They're getting married, which is nice. Robin and Oracle.
2 funerals and a wedding, eh?
Well, obviously they know he's not dead.
No.
And then it's kind of the ending's fine. Basically, it's a cinematic of 2 parents and a kid leaving a movie theater, going down an alley.
Right.
A guy pulls a gun on them, takes the guy's wallet, like kicks him in the stomach so he falls over. Another guy grabs the pearl necklace, the pearls drop to the ground, and then there's like the silhouette of a bat, it's Batman.
With Batman, yeah.
But then it does something weird where it morphs into like the, you know how the Scarecrow version of Batman was all like
This is from Batman Begins. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's like even more amped up than that. It just like flies at the screen, and they're implying that it's something worse than Batman, something scarier, and I'm like, it's just Bruce Wayne again. Like, I mean, I know that he's faking his death, but I know that they're kind of trying to pull a Dark Knight Returns thing off, where, you know, he fakes his own death at the end, like he fakes a heart attack.
Right.
And they bury him, everyone knows he's Bruce Wayne, and then Clark Kent hears the heartbeat, and he's like, and then he just continues to work as Batman Underground. I'm not going to talk about Dark Knight Returns. It's a fucking shitty book. But, you know, in the true ending of that book, Batman lives on.
Right.
But he lives on, and he's different. In this game, it kind of felt weird. Like, it was like, but who would really believe that Bruce Wayne is dead after, like, another Batman shows up? I don't know. It just feels a little off.
When they know that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
When they know Bruce Wayne is Batman, it's like, is it really inconceivable that someone with that amount of money and stuff couldn't blow up his house and have an escape plan? Like, because that's the thing, is like, yeah, okay, the house blew up, but who really thinks it was someone else? I'm pretty sure it was Bruce Wayne who did that, right? Like, he's got tons of summer homes and whatnot he can escape to. I'm sure he's out there somewhere.
Well, that was the cool thing about The Dark Knight Returns. It's still in the complex where his manor was, but now it's under it. It's underground. It's in
the bat caves and stuff. And Alfred dies at the end of that book. Like, he has a heart attack because he's so old. He's in his
I haven't
90s
read the book. I watched the animated production, and it was still pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's almost 100%.
Like, it's accurate. To the.
The only thing that I remember watching or listening to Kevin Smith's podcast, Batman on Batman, about the adaptation, and I agree with him on this, where the book has a great running narration by Batman, like by Bruce Wayne. Like, it's kind of like in, you know, that those Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr., you know, where he describes what he's going to do in the fight scene, like, okay, jab to the solar plexus, then like haymaker to the right elbow, dislocate jaw, that type of thing. That's exactly what happens in Dark Knight Returns, where he's like, I have to be stealthy, like I make a lot more noise now that I'm old.
Right.
So I have to rely on fear more than other things. Like, he explains methodically.
He monologues as the story goes on. Yeah.
That would have been nice to have if, in like as a running narration in the movie. Like, don't need all of the lines in it, I guess, because it would have been a lot. Also, I wasn't in love with the guy who they got to play Batman in that adaptation. I thought they could have gotten someone better. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's see if I have anything else. The last thing I'll talk about is Harley Quinn. It's kind of a minor quibble because she's never been the biggest part of these games anyway. But she doesn't show up for very long in Arkham Knight. It's disappointing. There's some DLC that you can get for her.
Like Harley's Revenge, but I think that was
Arkham City.
Yeah.
And that felt nice because you got to be Robin saving Batman.
Right.
In that one. Plus, it was a nice little kind of affirmation that yeah, Joker's dead. He ain't coming back because Harley's mourning for him. This is post Arkham City. In this universe, the Joker has died.
It is one of those weird things where I think they were hoping they could probably just end the series there, but
yeah. Well, because you get a death in the family shot of him holding the Joker body and bringing it out, and then the game ends with the credits of the Joker singing over the black screen, and you're like, man, this is really haunting. They do that again at the end of Arkham Knight during the credits. The Joker sings a song. Like, this just feels like a retread. I know you definitely want to do an Arkham game for a next-gen system because you want to show off your hardware and how good it is, right?
They're relying purely on the Joker. Like, Joker's the main bad guy in Asylum.
Yep.
He's the main in Arkham City.
Well, he may as well be. Because
he's the one he's the end game, right? Essentially,
yeah. After Hugo Strange bites it, and after Ra's al Ghul bites it, sorry, Ra's al Ghul, and then it turns out it was a fake out with Clayface and stuff. Yeah, it's Joker at the very end.
Origins this is a prequel, so the Joker.
It is Joker, yeah.
Game, right?
Joker is just pretending to be Black Mask.
And then with Knight, Joker's still around.
Yep.
Even though it's Scarecrow who's sort of
the final boss is Joker.
Yeah.
But it's just the Joker inside Batman's mind.
So you're ending the games with the Joker. It's like that's essentially what they've decided is without the Joker, the Batman games aren't going to be as sellable. Like people need to know the Joker's in here. But I think they're doing themselves a huge injustice by saying that none of the other characters are complex enough or are that they can't develop them to the point where they could be a viable reason for the game to happen. Like if City was, let's say Penguin was pulling all the strings in Arkham City.
Okay.
Right. Which is possible because he's another tycoon. He's got money. He's got affluence within the community. He's always playing both sides. He's not, he deals information.
Yep.
But he's also committing crimes.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not difficult to see that Penguin could be in charge of the whole operation for City, but it's not. It's once again you have a fight. Like you have a fight with Penguin in Arkham City.
Yep. The Iceberg Lounge.
But it's just like one of those weird things where it's like I'm just gonna run from cover to cover because he's got the ice gun.
Yeah.
Right. It's not as appealing.
It's not even his own gun. He just has the freeze ray.
Yeah.
Was that what it was? I haven't played it.
Yeah. Well, I haven't played it.
It's Mr. Freeze's freeze ray that he has. He just stole it.
You're collecting bits and pieces of Freeze's equipment to bring it back to him. I think that's right before he betrays you.
And that's unfortunate too, because you're right. All of these characters do have like a very rich background. It's just kind of a double-edged sword that Heath Ledger popularized the Joker so much, like back when Dark Knight came out, because I think that's why it happened. Is the Joker is the seminal Batman villain. Fine, it's his arch nemesis. It's the Lex Luthor to your Superman. But they really pushed hard to make Scarecrow the villain for Arkham Knight, and it was almost like they were like, but don't worry, Joker's still in it.
Yeah.
I feel like they just should have committed and been like, no, Scarecrow's the new head honcho. They would have had to really, really earn it, because even towards the end of the game, I'm like, I remember the Jonathan Crane from Arkham Asylum. He was a fucking punk. and like you just punch him out once and then he's done.
But that was never his strong point. He was not a combatant where he could,
No.
you know, fight you. You know, you couldn't duke it. He wouldn't duke it out. It's because his methods was to convince people that he was scarier than he was.
Yeah, and that's fine, and that's what they should have done more of in Arkham Knight. They do touch on it a little bit, especially where there's a part where Oracle gets kidnapped, because obviously Jason Todd knows where she is, so they take her, and then there's a great scene, like it punched me in my stomach when I saw it happen, but there's a scene where you eventually track down Scarecrow. You find out where Oracle's being kept. She's in like a sealed off room that's being pumped with Scarecrow toxin. And from your point of view, it looks like she's terrified. You try to break the glass, but as you're trying to do that, she's like shooting at it because there's a gun there. There's a gun on the table right beside her wheelchair. And like it looks like she's trying to kill you because, you know, she's terrified. And then as I think it's the Scarecrow monologuing to you, like, there is nothing but fear, and like watch her as she succumbs to it. And she puts the gun up to her head, and then the Joker's face comes out, and he's got like his fingers there, and he goes like blam, and then he disappears, and Barbara's on the ground, and she's dead. Like, you flip on detective mode, there's Barbara Gordon deceased,
Right.
and I'm like, okay, but she's not dead, and she wasn't. But you know, more of that stuff. Like they had a really good fake out in Arkham Asylum where you think just Jim Gordon straight up dead, but then you notice that Batman's eyes are glowing, and you're like, ear toxin.
Same thing when you're in the mausoleum where his parents are.
Yeah.
Right.
Why did you let us die, Bruce?
So like it's one of those, it's like scary things have to be like, you have to commit. Like if you don't commit, they just become comical.
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
or you just don't believe that it happened.
yeah, and everyone, like, you know, we were talking a little bit earlier with one of our friends about just the aspect of metagaming.
Yeah.
And how like we become so obsessed with knowing why that we start to metagame outside. Like we take the thing not as what it is, like the narrative, and stay constrained within its limitations, but now we're looking outside of it and just like poking at it and trying to figure out, you know, why things are. And you can always tell, like, you know, something's going to happen in a specific way,
Yeah.
just because the cues have been delivered to you over and over and over again in books and movies and games, and you know, like, you know what the cliche is, and
Yeah.
you can catch it before it even happens. Like, this character will die, or that's a fake out, or, you know.
Exactly.
And it happens over, and you become less excited. Like, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how they were super pumped for, you know, like, we were talking about this last time too, about like the new Marvel movies.
Yeah.
And how, you know, they were excited for Civil War, and you know, like, I'm not. It's just one of those things, like, nothing new will be presented on the table for me to be excited about.
Yeah.
It'll be the same, like, if the formula for Age of Ultron is followed through, it's not going to be satisfactory. Like, it's going to be a popcorn flick, and yeah, that's fine. You know, don't dress it in what it's not.
Yeah, and I guess that is definitely the risk that you take if you do watch trailers like I do. But yeah, I'm really hoping that with Civil War, I'm really hoping now that Cap dies. Like, something needs to happen where it shakes things up a bit, because they kind of did it with Winter Soldier, where it's like, oh, Shield's not a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have it anymore. But you're also like, but all the characters that we like from Shield are still around.
And Shield is still operational from Age of Ultron. Like,
yeah,
we
like,
know that they're still there.
Like,
They're just...
Nick Fury is somehow able to get a hold of a helicarrier from a barn okay.
Which doesn't, you never know why. It's just, it happens.
It's just he gets in touch with Colby Smulders and he's like, Robin, we really need a helicarrier. And she's like, I can't do it, Ted.
Right.
But yeah, you know, actually, I'm gonna talk about Batman v Superman for a sec because the last trailer just dropped a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan. I was a fan of the first trailer, thought it looked interesting. Wasn't a fan of the second trailer, thought it looked like shit. But I think they fired the guy who made the last trailer, the team of people who did the last one, because the latest one was so good. You get a nice shot of Wonder Woman. You get some nice stuff happening. It actually feels like Batman v Superman. Like, it feels very Dark Knight Returns in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I think that'll be interesting to shake things up a bit because we see some Avengers, like, you know, scrap it out in the Avengers, but nothing too much of a consequence. You know, when Thor and Iron Man and Cap all fight in the forest in Avengers 1, it's just because they don't know each other.
Yeah.
Like, they don't recognize Thor, and Thor's like, oh, who are you? I can throw my hammer at you. Okay, whatever. But in Batman v Superman, what it's looking like, there's a great line where Ben Affleck was saying to Alfred, if there's even a 1% chance that this guy, Superman, is not on our side, then we have to take him out. We have to take measures to contain him.
And again, that's one of the weird right-wing things about Batman.
Yeah, that's the character, right? You know,
yeah,
he's very much black and white. There's ironically no shades of gray happening.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's fine. That's the type of movie that it is. Oh, Nikki. Hey, buddy. What was I saying? Yeah.
That's the kind of movie it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of movie it is. It's fine. As long as if the action works, if if the characters are done well, then it'll be fine. It'll be good. I'm just most excited for Wonder Woman, honestly. Like, there's a really awesome shot of her in the trailer, and I wasn't sold on like how they were gonna do like Wonder Woman in terms of how like she moved and stuff like in combat. But it looks like Zack Snyder has upped his game considerably in terms of how to like frame an action shot and make it look really dynamic. Like, he's always been good at it. 300 is excellent for that. It's a very aesthetic movie. Say what you want.
But it doesn't work with everything. Like, they did the same sort of thing with Watchmen, like that real sort of like cut down to like the moment before the impact, and there's like this it draws it out, and then you snap it with impact.
He's not doing that now. Okay. With what I've seen, the trailer opens with Batman, very Arkham game-esque, taking out like a group of bad guys, like flowing from one punch from one guy into another guy, and like, you know, using the environment to his advantage and stuff. And there was none of that like
right.
Slow down, snap zoom shit. From the trailer, it looked like it didn't look like there was any of that actually. The shot of Wonder Woman is you see her in like a dress, like dancing with Bruce Wayne, and he says something, and she's like, "Oh, I don't think you've ever met a woman like me." I'm like, that's kind of cool. Switches to her in her costume. She's got like the shield up,
right,
and then she like leaps forward, like it looks like she's just hurling herself through the air, but it's like, no, I can fly. I'm so down. Like, oh, I can't wait. So I'm back on board. I was a little on the fence about whether this movie might be good, whether it might be terrible. It still might be terrible.
Yeah,
Man of Steel let me down a little bit.
When the movie started coming out, like I said, I'm not excited. Like, I'm not hyped for these movies anymore. I'll go see them.
It's not like Star Wars.
Yeah, like Star Wars was a pretty big deal too, right? But it wasn't like I didn't go see it on the day that it came out. Like,
I did.
you also saw it several times after.
I did.
You know, like the only movies in the last little while that I've gone to see opening night were the Hobbit trilogy.
I saw the first two on opening night. By the third one, I don't think I really cared anymore.
I went to see all three. It became sort of like an annual tradition with a friend of ours, Danielle Story, and I. Like, we're both very much into Lord of the Rings and sort of like the mythos that it's made. So it just became a really cool thing.
That was the case with the first two as well. Like, I would go see them with my best friend Kurt and my buddy Dan, because we're all born in December, so they would come out in December. We'd all go see them, kind of have like a birthday night out, go see Lord of the Rings, and then 10 years later, The Hobbit. Did not end up doing that with the third one. I guess because, you know, I'm in Cambridge now, didn't get out to see it. I think Kurt was still in Ottawa, so didn't happen. Ended up seeing it with my parents and my wife, which, you know, fine.
Right.
But I mean, those movies, they got their own issues. They're fine.
Yeah, it's not they follow a formula once again, right? Like, it was something they'd already did that, and it was groundbreaking, and then they brought it back, and it's like the weird, like, they try to make them better, but at the same time, it's like the more stuff you add into it.
Yeah. Well, it's art coming from adversity.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings movies, much like the original Star Wars trilogy, was fraught with problems. Like, there are a lot of original things happen, like a lot of practical sets, a lot of, you know, miniatures, a lot of real costumes, a lot of work that
on a very tight budget.
On a very tight budget. The combined or the budget, I think it was for the first Hobbit movie, or maybe it was the combined budget of the first two, was more money than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy budget. Which, I mean, you can count for inflation as well as 10 years before.
And he wasn't as much, like, Peter Jackson wasn't a proven director at that point. Right?
No.
He'd done some stuff, but it wasn't like...
He wasn't the name that he is now. Although I don't know if people really consider him that name anymore after the Hobbit movies. Do you know what he's doing now? Like,
I'm not as pressed on, like, what's happening in the cinematic, like, world as much. Like, movies come and go, and trailers will appear, and I just, like, I'm a firm believer in the concept that you have to consume media to create media.
Sure.
Right? So, you know, I try to watch the shows that are, you know, sort of that are trending at the moment, kind of thing. But at the same time, like, long format stuff, which I can't really fit in, becomes way more difficult to do. Like, I made the choice to watch Tron Legacy recently.
Okay.
And
I still haven't seen it.
It's, you know, like, it's one of those things, like, kind of like Star Wars. When it was coming out, it was a huge deal because it was like, we are reinvigorating the series, which is beloved, and it wasn't that great.
Daft Punk is in it.
That is the best part of that movie. The soundtrack itself is really so good. Impressive that it blends. You know, like, even you see a lot of movies now, and they still have like a very symphonic soundtrack to them, right?
Yeah.
And there are some movies that sort of go beyond that, and it becomes more theme appropriate. Like, you can apply, you know, symphonic orchestra to anything, and it'll work because it has an emotional response, right? When people hear violins and flutes and saxophones and all that stuff playing,
it's a very classical score.
Exactly. But, you know, two movies that have the perfect score for the type of movie that they are, like, that I feel are, like, it's just, like, spot on, is Tron Legacy.
Yep.
And the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it takes the themes and the ideas behind what you're seeing, and it puts it into a very, very accurate musical score.
I will add to that with two of my own, actually done by the same guy, so that's why. Dread and Ex Machina. Those two movies are interesting in terms of their soundtrack because they feel very much like 80s soundtracks where it's very synth heavy.
Right.
But they're also grounded in like a contemporary kind of.
There's some modernity to them that they feel like it's a now thing.
Yeah, because
Like,
it's a lot of driving bass and a lot of like, you know, there's drum machines happening and stuff, but it's like it feels old and new at the same time. So I guess it's timeless.
Yeah. Like I listened to, after I watched Legacy, I went and listened to the soundtrack for Tron, and I was like, I could listen to this all day. Like
it's also the soundtrack that I believe inspired Daft Punk to make their own original music, because, you know, with the 3 albums that they put out initially, I think it's Human After All.
There's Homework,
Discovery, which is my favorite still, and sorry, there's one more. It might just be called Daft Punk. But when they made Random Access Memories, like there were a couple tracks on there that were extremely symphonic and really interesting.
Well, they're working with a lot of different artists and stuff too to create like really original stuff. And it's a trend that I'm finding with a lot of really established artists that are doing like that have a very defined like they have a sound to them.
Yeah.
Like Damon Albarn of the Gorillaz in their last album, Plastic Beach. Like it was a very similar idea. Like it wasn't just like they've always worked with other artists,
Right.
But this one was like they were bringing in a bunch of different flavors into this album, and they're always like pushing the boundaries and like, you know, changing up what they're doing. Like, they did an album on tour called I can't remember what it was called, but it was like they did it while there was there's a bunch of recordings of like their trips between places.
Okay, so it was like recorded on the fly, kind of.
Yeah, like and it, you know, like it has once again it has a very different sound to it, but it still feels like, you know, this is something that they would do, like the overtones.
It's still the same band, just doing something else, essentially. Like it feels like it's within their realm of what they make, but it's completely different.
It's like there's the Gorillaz, and this is the music that they make, and this feels like this is the Gorillaz, and this is the music that they would listen to.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers it. So, final thoughts on Arkham Knight for me, just to circle back to that.
We took a interesting
a
turn
very
into
long detour.
music, yeah.
Okay, so Arkham Knight story, when you get it, graphics for the most part, Batmobile when it's not required, and the voice casting, all excellent stuff. I would give this a solid, like, I would give it like a B grade, like a good 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
For the stuff that's there, that's really good, it's really good. But there's just a lot of shit that you have to get through to get to the good stuff. And I wish it wasn't so bogged down. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for me, I think, for Arkham Knight. Not as good as Arkham Asylum. That gets a perfect 10 for me.
Yeah, that's the, like you said, that's one of the 2 games that you 100%. That's the closest I've gotten to 100%. Like overall, including achievements, I think it was like 100% completion of the game, and then like 98% on achievements
On the challenge, right?
But those specifically achievements.
Oh, okay.
Only because there were I had to go back to replay to get one of the achievements. Like it's like the last corridor before you go see the Joker. There's a bunch of the Joker posse's like standing in the hallway, and you're supposed to like beat them up or something. And I just walked past them. But there's an achievement for like it's like Party Crasher.
Yeah, Party Crasher. Yeah.
And I didn't do that. I was like, whatever. I just walked through it.
That part's so fun because I played the game like probably 5 or 6 times in total. But one of the later times that I did it, I sprayed like the explosive gel at the beginning of the corridor, in the middle, and at the end.
Right.
Then just set it off. It basically takes out almost everybody, and then just started like ground pounding everybody, and then fought the rest of them. Oh man,
just
funny.
Basically Joker confetti.
I felt like such a dick. I was like, they were clapping for me for just a second ago, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why I don't think I complete the game, because I didn't go back to replay it all.
I see.
Yeah.
That's necessary to do. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Episode 3, I think, was a success. We'll be back with episode 4 next week. In the meantime, I guess that's the end.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to our bit of banter.
Yeah. Bye. I'll fade that out, don't worry.